For me, this is a wow.
As an agent in New York City, like, what does your day typically look like?
A lot of emails and a lot of phone calls.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping right into the stack of sources you sent over, and they all point to one thing: the massive challenge of housing and homelessness in New York City.
Yeah, specifically we're looking at the new strategy, or the beginnings of a strategy, from Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani.
And it's all centered on his first few moves, which were, let's just say, very controversial.
That's putting it mildly. And our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack the central tension we found in all these sources. On one hand, you have this big moral push to completely humanize the city's approach.
This idea that housing is a fundamental right.
Exactly. But on the other hand, you've got the cold, hard reality of decades of bureaucratic inertia, real administrative roadblocks.
And you can feel that tension in the numbers. The scale of what Mamdani is walking into is just, it's huge.
It's staggering. I mean, the sources frame it perfectly. We're talking about homeless numbers in New York City reaching levels not seen since the Great Depression.
So this isn't a new problem. It's a crisis that has been building for years.
Right, and it's a very specific kind of failure. Previous administrations, for whatever reason, just have not been able to connect the thousands of people who need help, families, veterans, individuals, to actual permanent housing.
Which brings us to Mamdani's opening move. Because he didn't start with some quiet policy paper. He started with a flashpoint.
He really did. He came right out of the gate with a pledge to stop the NYPD from conducting those homeless encampment crackdowns, the so-called sweeps.
A move that immediately took this out of the realm of bureaucracy and straight into a debate about morality.
Which you have to assume was his intention all along.
So let's get into the specifics of what he said. He didn't just say stop the sweeps. He gave a very clear reason why.
He did. He framed it as inhumane to break up these encampments if you don't have a real housing solution to offer them right then and there.
There's a quote here that really stood out. He said, "The question, however, is whether we will be satisfied by just shuttling those New Yorkers to another equally cold place in our city."
Or whether we want to connect them to housing. It's a direct challenge. He's saying that just moving people around, which is what the sweeps often do, isn't a solution. It's just hiding the problem.
Okay, so that's the moral argument. It's powerful. But the immediate counter-argument, which we saw in the sources, is, well, what happens in the meantime? If you stop the sweeps, don't you risk these encampments growing, potentially creating public safety issues?
That is the political tightrope, absolutely. And it's the #1 concern you hear from a lot of New Yorkers. But for him, the logic goes a bit deeper. He sees this not just as a crisis for the unhoused, but as a symptom of a much larger economic problem.
This is his idea of housing as the ultimate safety net, right?
Precisely. He broadens the scope completely.
Yeah.
He's not just talking about the people currently on the street.
He said something like hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers are just one rent hike, one medical emergency, one layoff from joining the ranks of the homeless.
Right. And when you see it that way, housing isn't charity. It's essential infrastructure for the whole city. It keeps everything else from falling apart.
Of course, an idea like that was bound to get some pushback from, the people currently in power.
Oh, immediately. The outgoing mayor, Eric Adams, his response was very blunt. He just called Mamdani's approach idealistic.
Just one word: idealistic.
And that one word tells you everything you need to know about the philosophical divide here. Because while Mamdani is making this moral case, you have other powerful figures, like the governor, who are backing a very different model.
A more balanced approach, you could say.
A multi-pronged approach, that's the term they use. And it explicitly includes enforcement. So, yes, removing people from the streets, but, and this is the key part, only when it's paired with immediate support. Housing, mental health services, that sort of thing.
So it's an all-of-the-above strategy versus Mamdani's initial stop this one thing strategy.
Exactly. It's a classic political clash.
Yeah.
But then, and this is what's so fascinating in the sources, after all that rhetoric, Mamdani makes a really critical pivot.
Right. So days after this huge controversial statement, he doesn't double down on the philosophy. He gets practical.
He gets very practical. He schedules a meeting with real estate leaders and members of the Partnership for New York City. This wasn't a debate. It was a nuts and bolts policy session.
And the sources gave us two main goals for that meeting. First, just figure out how to cut the red tape around housing the homeless.
And second, how to get rid of the roadblocks that make it so hard to build new units and get more federal funding.
It's a pretty clear strategy when you lay it out like that. The rhetoric about stopping sweeps only really works if you have somewhere for people to go.
Yes. You can't have one without the other. He knows he can't just stop enforcement if the system for providing an alternative is completely broken. He has to build the solution pipeline first.
Which you'd think would mostly be about building new housing, right? I mean, that feels like the biggest lift.
You would think so. But this is where we get to I think, the most shocking number in all the source material. It's the aha moment.
This is the number that should really stick with you after this deep dive.
It's a direct quote from Mamdani, based on the city's own data. He says, it takes 252 days on average to fill an affordable housing unit.
Wait, say that again?
252 days. And then he adds, which in the most expensive city in the United States of America should be the easiest thing that we do?
252 days. That's, what, 8 months and 12 days? Almost 9 months.
9 months.
Think about that. An apartment is sitting there. It's empty. It's funded. And it takes nearly 9 months of paperwork to get a person from a shelter or the street into that apartment.
It's the definition of bureaucratic inertia. It's not one form. You have to imagine it's layers and layers of things.
Yeah.
Is the funding state, federal, or city? That has to be reconciled. Then the applicant has to be vetted multiple times. Then the unit needs inspections.
And every single step adds weeks or maybe months to the timeline.
Right. So the problem isn't just a lack of compassion. It's that the system itself is an obstacle. That 252-day wait turns what should be a short-term crisis for an individual into a long-term catastrophe.
And that keeps people on the streets, which then fuels the whole public safety debate.
It's a vicious cycle. And it shows that Mamdani's strategy is two-sided. The public rhetoric about sweeps is tied directly to this very private, very practical effort to fix that broken machine.
Yeah.
If he can cut that number down, the whole debate changes.
So what do New Yorkers themselves want? I mean, the sources captured a whole range of voices, from advocates to regular citizens.
And that's where you really see how complex this is. Let's start with the advocates, the people on the front lines.
We saw comments from David Giffen from the Coalition for the Homeless. He sounded cautiously optimistic.
Very cautious. But his proposed solution aligns perfectly with Mamdani's focus. He basically says, yes, we need more permanent housing, but the key is to reduce all those administrative obstacles and get people moved into apartments. Fast.
So for him, it's all about speed. Fix the machine.
Exactly. But then you have the reality of the subway system, for example. And a lot of New Yorkers are focused on safety first and foremost.
We pulled a quote from one person who was just worried about the practical danger of it all.
Yeah, that person was saying, encampments on subway platforms, tents near the tracks during rush hour. They were asking, how's that going to work?
Which is a valid, immediate concern. It shows that for many, this isn't an abstract policy debate. It's about their daily safety and the city's basic functions.
It is. And that pressure for immediate order is always going to be there.
And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have this frustration that leads to some really radical ideas about property itself.
I found this one fascinating. It's this idea born from just sheer desperation. This one New Yorker suggested that if a landlord has a property sitting vacant for a certain amount of time,
they should just lose the property.
the city should take it. It's a radical idea, but comes from a very simple observation. You have thousands of people with no home, and you have valuable apartments sitting empty.
It's essentially an argument for seizing a resource that the market isn't using effectively to solve a human crisis.
Exactly. It bypasses all the red tape and goes straight to the supply. And it shows you just how deep the public's frustration runs. They see vacant housing not as a private investment to be held, but as a critical public resource that's being wasted.
So if we pull all these threads together, what we're really looking at here is a collision course. You have Mamdani's big idealistic vision.
No sweeps without housing.
Right. And it's crashing directly into, well, 3 different realities. First, the bureaucratic nightmare of that 252-day wait.
Second, the establishment view that you need a balanced approach that has to include enforcement for public safety.
And third, a public that is completely split. You have people demanding the seizure of private property on one side and people demanding safer subways on the other.
That sums it up perfectly. And what the sources really reveal is that the core issue isn't really compassion versus enforcement. At the end of the day, it's about speed.
It all comes back to the 252 days.
It all comes back to bureaucratic inertia. If, and it's a big if, but if Mamdani can slash that wait time, if he can get it down to 30 days or 20 days, the entire political problem changes.
Because the city would actually have a real, immediate solution to offer.
Precisely. The debate stops being about if we should house people and becomes about how fast we can get them the keys. That inefficiency is the bottleneck. It's what's allowed the crisis to grow to this scale.
So we want to leave you with a final thought on that. If the average wait time for an existing, empty, affordable apartment is 252 days, what single piece of red tape do you think is the biggest culprit? Is it a form, an inspection, a single agency sign-off? What's the one cut that would make the biggest difference?